Good morning, everybody. We want to welcome you to today's Lightspeed webinar, and our topic today is Streamlining Sales Success. I know all of you understand that sales is a key part of your dealership success, and really a lot of the functionality that's built into Lightspeed can help you even improve those efficiencies and streamline a lot of your processes. So let's take a look at some of the housekeeping for today. We're excited today. We've also got Josh and Quentin from the Lightspeed team here in the sales engineer and product marketing manager roles. And they're going to be available to help answer questions throughout the webinar. So anytime throughout today's webinar, if you've got questions, there's a little Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Type in your questions and we'll address those as we can as the webinar is proceeding. And then we'll talk about a lot of those at the Q&A that's reserved at the end of the session as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to today's presenter, Brian Tierney.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Diana, and thanks for joining us once again, folks, on a Wednesday webinar. Thanks for giving us some of your time today. As Diana mentioned, my name is Brian Tierney. I'm the software solutions engineer here with Lightspeed, and I come to you with a little over 30 years Lightspeed experience now, hard to believe. Spent 16 years in a motorcycle store here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Joined that dealership in 1995 and got behind a parts department computer and really learned about what Lightspeed was and spent 16 years in that store doing parts service and sales before joining the Lightspeed organization in 2011, where from there I've done a number of things from customer support to a little bit of business analyst, a little bit of on-site training, a little bit of consulting with the sales department, and now working with the marketing department to do things like this presentation and webinars. And once again, thanks for having me and thanks for joining us, folks. We've got a lot to cover when it comes to the sales department in Lightspeed. How do we use the tools to make the most of the opportunities that we have as a sales organization at your dealership, and really even here at Lightspeed? Those opportunities come and go, and when we get those opportunities, we want to make the most of them. And we're going to show you some ways that we leverage the tools inside of Lightspeed, some tools that you may already be familiar with, some things that you're already using, and we appreciate that you are. But we're going to show you some things maybe that you aren't using or maybe are using less than effectively. We'll see if we can provide you some new training, some new ideas on how to take those opportunities that you're getting and turn those into sales. So that's my goal today. With that, the agenda for today's meeting is we're going to talk about a number of things related to what I've just mentioned, from lead management or the deal desking screen, and kind of walk through that and make sure that everybody on the call is familiar with some of the tools that exist there, some of the customization that exists there too. We'll spend a minute just on some customizable forms, and I'll show you some places in the software where you can go and make adjustments to those forms. And we'll talk about that e-signature element to where you can kind of move your deal desking and your F&I experience into the digital age. We'll take a look at that. We'll also talk about our menu selling tool, which is something we haven't talked about in a little while. Some folks may be using it. Maybe some folks aren't even aware there is one in the Lightspeed world. We're going to show you what that looks like and how you apply that to your sales process. We'll talk about automated workflow management, from automated text and email communication that Lightspeed sends out, as well as appointment management like follow-ups and calls and deliveries of vehicles that you're selling. We'll spend some time on the mobile application, that tried and true tool that some of you are already using, and we love it that you are. And for those of you that haven't seen it before, this will be an opportunity for you to see something that I think is really cool with Lightspeed. We'll also talk about some possibilities using text marketing. What does that mean? And we'll get into more details about that. And then at the end of the presentation, at the end of the webinar, we'll take some questions and hopefully provide you some insight into answers to those questions. So that's my agenda. Let's start. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about the deal desking process. We might even call this lead management. And as I mentioned, some of you on the call have seen a lot of what I'm about to show you, but I might also show you some things that maybe you hadn't seen before, or maybe a different perspective, a way that you can apply what I'm about to show you to your process. Let's take a look at some of those things, kind of get our feet under us when it comes to the deal desking screen, and then we're going to talk about some other tools that you may or may not be aware of inside your sales module. So let's jump right into Lightspeed. I'm going to go right at the top of the screen. We're going to click Sales, and we're going to go into a screen called Leads, Quotes, and Deals. And hopefully folks on the call have seen this before. Before I jump into my test environment sales deal, I want to offer some tips and some tricks on this screen, which might seem a little bit strange from that perspective, but let's talk about it for a moment. First of all, you see lots of colors, and some of you may be using some of these colors, and if you're not, I'm going to show you where they came from and why they're pertinent to the conversation. But first, we'll just offer some insight. We see the deal date. We see the worksheet number or deal number. customer name, stage name, which has some phrases that are defining the sales process from beginning to middle to end. And believe it or not, that's where those colors are coming from to kind of tell you a little bit of the story of what's going on in the sales department or within each of these sales deals at a very high level. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Stock number, year, make, model of the vehicle that's being sold, some notes like we're delivering on Saturday, and the name of the salesperson. Now, as you're looking at your leads, quotes, and deal screen, you might see that yours looks a little different than mine. Couple of tips that I've applied to my experience when it comes to this screen. In my mind, less is more. Clutter makes things difficult to manage. So what I'll do when I come into my leads, quotes, and deal screen, or any list screen in the software for that matter, is I'll right-click on this dark blue bar at the very top of each of these columns, and it's going to open up my column options menu, where I can pick and choose what columns actually make sense for me to view. Going back to less is more, I might remove the clutter. I might remove the things that I don't really care about. Like maybe I don't necessarily need to see contract date, or maybe I don't need to see trade make, or maybe I don't need to see monthly payment. So I might take those columns away just simply by unchecking the box. And when I do that, it reduces a little bit of the clutter. I can take some of the columns and reposition them where I want them to be. I can click and drag and move things around and really get a customized view of the screen. Now, the last thing I'll mention before we dive into the deal is I've also sorted this by colors or by stage name. And how I did that, notice at the top of the column for stage name, there's a little triangle that's pointing upwards, and that's indicating that I've sorted my list by a column called stage name. I've grouped all the colors and phrases together so that, again, things look nice and clean and tidy. I'll show you an example of what happens if I remove that sort. If I sort by deal date, all of a sudden the colors all become a little bit crazy. And in my mind, when I look at this, it brings stress to me. So I want things that are organized. I want things that are clean. I want things concise. And that's just going to help me manage my deal process when things are clean and tidy. So I'm going to go over to stage name and sort the list by stage name. It keeps the colors kind of uniform, and it makes this a little bit more appealing to the eye. And I like that. All right. So let's take a look at the deal screen. And that's just me being a little bit nitpicky, but I hope that brought some value to you. So we're going to go into Mr. Jeff Emmig's Forest River sales deal, and we're going to talk about the deal screen itself. If you've been on a webinar with me before, or if you've been in a product demonstration, you might have heard me refer to this as your single source desking solution. And it is exactly that. And here's why I call it that. First of all, you'll notice that the customer's name, buyer, in this case, is at the very top left of the screen, along with a co-buyer, in this case, Jeff Emmig's wife, Jenny Emmig. Just below their name is a description or a note that's indicating that we may be delivering this product on Saturday to the customer. You can use that to define anything you want to. It's a form that, or a phrase, or a field that you can enter any kind of information that makes sense to you. Source tells you where that deal came from or that lead came from. Your website, Facebook, Craigslist, RV Trader, where did that lead come from? And we may be tracking that to see who's our most successful lead sources. We may be spending money on those lead sources to send them to our business. We may want to know what our return on that investment is. This lead has been assigned to a salesperson, front-end salesperson named Brad Lloyd, who's part of an alphabetized list of salespeople that fall in a tool called a round robin. So now Brad's in charge of following up with Jeff. The RV that Jeff's on your website or your Facebook page or Craigslist is attached to the lead. We see stock number, year, make, model, price. The bottom of the screen is where all the prices start to flow into the deal desking screen. So I see my selling price, I see freight, I see dealer prep charges, I see fees like license fees, documentation, maybe tire recycling fees. I also see things like extras, your service contracts, your gap policies, your prepaid maintenance. And those can be set up as blanket statements, or I can adjust those as I'm negotiating with my customer and we're talking price or payment. Tax and cash price show up at the bottom of that column. Now, one little nugget, one thing that you may not be aware of, is you can put up some price protection inside of your major unit record so that you can prevent salespeople from selling below a specific value. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to edit the unit from the deal screen. We're going to click Edit Unit, and it takes me into the major unit record, where I'm going to go right to the Purchasing tab inside the major unit inventory record. And over on the right side of the screen, I see a minimum selling price where I can set that based on a percentage of retail, or I can set it to a specific amount. And what I'm saying here as a manager or as a director of the department is that is the bottom line. That is the lowest price we're willing to sell it for. And when I set that and hit save, come back to the deal screen and watch what happens. Now, just back to, for context, when we were looking at that major unit record screen, we saw that we set our minimum selling price to $40,000. What if I try to sell this thing for $39,000? Watch what happens to that price field. It just turned red on me. And that's an indicator right away that I'm now below the threshold. And if I try to sell it for this, I'm probably going to get in trouble. So be mindful of that. That's something you might want to consider as you're directing or managing your sales department. So keep that in mind. Now, one other little detail that we'll speak to before we move on to the next subject is bottom center of the screen is where some finance options live, like term, rate, days to first, and a monthly payment. So in this context, Jeff is reaching out to me from my website as a lead, but same thing would happen if the customer was standing in front of me and I clicked new and I started generating a quote or a lead right in front of the client. I've got my pricing on the bottom left and I've got my monthly payment in the center. Now, when it comes to credit or managing payments, the very top of the deal screen is a couple of buttons, Credit Inquiry and 700 Credit Dashboard. Let's talk about those for just a moment. If I press the Credit Inquiry button, we are integrated as a Lightspeed partner with a tool called 700 Credit, which allows you to do a hard or a soft credit pull from your website. There can be a widget that's installed on your website where customers can put in their information and do a soft credit pull, which funnels into the screen we're looking at now as a lead. Gives you a little bit of an indication of your buyer worthiness, but if you're doing this from the deal screen, we're about to do a hard credit pull for our customer in this case. So we enter credit information, name, address, social, birth date, all the applicable details, and maybe I'm doing a co-applicant as well, so Jeff Emmig's wife is included. We're going to do a joint credit pull, and I can also do a credit application with credit companies like App1, Cuddle, DealerTrack, and Route1, which Lightspeed's going to send all the customer, vehicle, and F&I information from the deal desking screen to those platforms so we can manage those through third-party companies, credit companies like the ones listed here, built right into the program. Now, one additional detail that we offer in terms of the Lightspeed integrations is on the Finance tab, we also offer an integration with a tool or a company called Octane. Now, the overarching finance company is called Roadrunner Financial. Octane is a little bit more of a recreation space facing side. Kind of Octane refers to fun and excitement and speed and power and all the things that we sell in our dealerships. So this is an integration built right into the platform where you can send customer information, deal information, F&I information directly to Octane. You get your credit inquiry sent over, you get an approval within minutes, you get your funding once the deal's booked, much like you would say a credit card company. So real quick funding, and it's built right into the program, and there's no extra charges for that Octane integration. Last little feature I'm going to point to as we're looking at the deal desking screen and getting acquainted with this screen is my 700 Credit Dashboard. So going back to that 700 Credit integration, if I press that button, I can do a number of reports on the customer to check buyer worthiness, run a red flag report, run an OFAC report, and check out this customer before we move too far forward down the deal path. And this gives me a lot of information to, again, check buyer worthiness to find out if we actually have a leg to stand on when it comes to this deal. Powerful stuff that's built right into the deal desking screen, and it's an integration that you might consider. Now, let's move on to the next subject. We're going to talk a little bit about managing custom forms and the e-signature element when it comes to those custom forms. And what does that mean? Well, as we kind of move into more of a digital space, and I know a lot of folks are still printing contracts to a laser printer. Some folks are even using the old impact printers, and we're signing in the analog fashion with a wet pen, a wet signature. But as we move more towards digital and we're using iPads and Android devices, tablets and cell phones to do the documentation signing, that's really where some of these custom forms and some of this e-signature technology really benefits you in terms of providing a seamless, fast, automated experience when it comes to deal desking. Let's take a look at what that looks like on the deal desking screen. So we're going to go right back to Lightspeed. I'm going to go to the top of the screen and point to our buyer's order for today. Now, our buyer's order is one of those forms that's customizable in your system preference menu, and I'll show you where that lives in just a moment. But when I open up my buyer's order, I've got my business logo. I've got custom colors that kind of match my logo to give it that custom feel. I've got a picture of the vehicle that we're selling that's pulled from my major unit inventory record and has populated the form. As a default, I've got a definition of all the add-ons and accessories that are attached to this vehicle, including pricing, payment matrix, trade information, and maybe some notes about the business, all included on this form. Signature line and disclaimer statement. Now back to the idea that we can sign this in the old analog fashion, kind of like an old 8-track player. Well, I can press the print button, send this to a laser printer, customer could sign with a pen. We're moving into maybe the Apple Music or the Spotify world or the digital space. We press our e-signature button, and I'm going to send a digital copy of this to a tablet, to a cell phone. and also let the customer review it in a digital space, this including every other form that I need to use in my deal desking experience. Customer reviews all those forms in a digital environment, signs with their finger, and that signed document that the customer has now signed with their finger has been downloaded to their device, or it's now shared digitally with the customer via text or email, and everything that we've signed is attached to my eSignature tab within the deal. It's part of my backup, and if I need to reprint something in the old 8-track analog version, I can reprint from that screen as well. Let's talk about where that customization for the buyer's order lives, and then we'll move on to the next subject. So system menu and preferences. Now this is going to be controlled by permission, so not everybody's going to see this, but I just wanted to offer some insight into where some of that customization exists for your buyer's order. So I've opened up my sales menu. I've gone to buyer's order, and this is where I can select those colors, those background colors for the different header elements on my form. I can also add a default image. Maybe it's of the products we sell, maybe it's a business logo, maybe it's a picture of the dealership. But if we've neglected to include photos in our major unit record, we do want a picture to show up on that form. That's your default image. Then you can pick and choose what elements do I want to show up on that form. Going back to less is more, which ones don't I want to show up on that form? Click save, and now you've got a customized version of your buyer's order that's different from every other Lightspeed dealer or every other dealer in town that's custom and designed specifically for your business, which I think is pretty cool, adding that custom element to the process. So let's talk about the next subject. We're going to dive right into menu selling that's built right into the deal desking screen. Now, some of you may have seen this before. Some of you may not even be aware it exists. Let's take a look at what it looks like, put it into practice with this particular deal, and then show you some elements that are included in that menu selling tool. So let's jump right back into Lightspeed here. So I go to Lightspeed, and at the very top of the screen, you might notice there's a menu selling button. Again, permission protected, of course, so maybe not everybody sees that, but if you do, press that button and just see what happens. Now, in my example, I've got a series of different products that we sell. So we've got our preferred customer. I've got one built for ATVs, one for dirt bikes, one for RVs, one for street bikes, and we sell marine and watercraft as well. And each of those menus are customized to those product types and offer products that relate to those particular products that I'm selling. For today's context, I'm going to use my preferred customer care menu, and I click OK. Now, if there's some elements that are flexible, some things that as I'm negotiating price and payment, this is where I get to input those values before the menu produces. Might be related to my service contract, gap policies. In this case, it's related to LoJack, and I click Finish. Now, what's happened in my view, you may not be seeing this because you're not seeing the screen that I'm looking at, but over on my other monitor, this menu selling view just popped up. Now, the idea is you might have a customer-facing monitor in your F&I or your sales office, where when you press that menu selling button, this visual just popped up on the customer-facing view. So that's a design by default. That's why it's doing that. In this context, for everybody to see the menu, I've just moved it over to my F&I person or my salesperson facing menu, and it brings up a series of columns. And let me offer some context into those columns. Custom colors, which I've decided as a dealership, I want those colors to be assigned to my excellence package, my premium, my preferred, my protection package. And by the way, the column headers, the definitions of those packages are designed by me. I pick and choose those phrases. Then I apply the F&I products like my gap policies, my prepaid maintenance, my insurance packages, my service contracts. I apply each of those F&I products to the associated packages or columns, and I can even build the individual prices. So each of these packages show individual prices, descriptions of what the items are that pertain to those packages. And what I think is the coolest thing about the menu is it's also pulling information from my deal screen and providing some context on the bottom of each of these columns. And what I mean by that, I'm just going to squash this down a little bit so we can see some details. You'll notice you've got a cash price on the deal screen. We've already spoken about that. You've got your monthly payment that's also visible on the deal screen. Now, if I go back to my menu, the price and monthly payment are going to be reflective of each of these columns. In other words, if I apply the excellence package to what's already on the deal desking screen, of course my monthly payment's going to change. Of course my price on the deal is going to change, and each of these columns reflects those changes. So as we're looking at the menu and we're interacting with the customer, and in my mind, the coolest thing about any menu selling tools, we're talking about intangible products. The customer buys a service contract or a gap policy. They're not walking out the door with a shiny chrome cool thing that they get to show off to their friends. They're walking out the door with maybe a piece of paper, and that's boring. So this is providing a little bit more of a tangible experience to be able to get more penetration when it comes to selling these kinds of products. So we kind of know that when we're talking about menu selling. But what's also cool about the menu selling tool is some processes, some F&I offices or salespeople like to print a copy of this menu. Now, the print version, just for context, allows me to review the same criteria that's on the digital screen, but it also gives me the ability to apply images, logos of the providers of each of these packaged items, including a little bit of a breakdown of the deal and maybe a picture of the product the customer's looking at. So I can print this, I can send a digital copy to the customer for their review and their signature and their input. So it gives me that same experience that we saw earlier on the buyer's order, and it's related directly to the menu selling tool. Now, should the customer decide, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take that excellence package, you talked me into it, let's do it. This little radial button at the top of the column next to the word excellence, if I check that radial button and click apply to deal, before I do that, let's kind of key in on the monthly payment. Right now is $572.37. If I apply this to the deal, my monthly payment is now reflective of the package I've selected from the menu. The cash price on the deal is also reflective of those things, and all those details have now dropped into the deal with essentially a press of a button, so it makes it easy. Well, let's talk about another scenario when it comes to menu selling. Let's say the customer says, yeah, I appreciate the information, but I'm going to pass on this for now. I may come back to see you in the future. Maybe we have an opportunity to sell service contracts with the customer in the future. If the customer should choose not to, you can print your disclaimer. Now, I know based on where you are in the country, there is a disclaimer requirement. This is a legal part of the menu selling tool. Should the customer decline, we want to make sure we get that signature so we're complying with all the legal requirements in the city and the state that you live in. So you print that disclaimer. That disclaimer can pop up. You can send this digitally if you like. Also, just like we talked about with the buyer's order in the previous form, you can print it to a laser printer and get that old 8-track analog version of the signature. You can provide both, but this make sure that you're meeting all the legal requirements when it comes to menu selling within the program. So that's a little bit of the menu selling experience. Of course, if there's questions about setting this up, we may take some of those questions following the presentation, but let's move on to the next subject. So I'm going to close some of these menus. We're going to cancel what we've saved so far, and we're going to go back to the next function, which is managing communication, managing workflow before, during, and after the sale. Now, some of you may be using our CRM tool. Some of you may have seen this before. We're going to talk about some of the elements that comes into our CRM experience, our automated communication, automated text and email communication, and also our appointment management schedule, our workflow management schedule, and how that flows with the deal screen. So let's go back into Lightspeed. We'll talk about that same sales deal once again. We're going to go back to Mr. Jeff Emig's RV sale. Click on the Communications tab, and there's a lot going on this screen. First of all, some of you may know this, but the green boxes are the outbound email and text messages that Lightspeed has sent out either automatically, or me as the salesperson or the F&I person has hit the send message button, sending out a text or an email to the customer, maybe a copy of a document, maybe an attached photo of the product the customer's looking at, but we've sent a message out manually. When the customer responds, the blue box is the response back from the customer. So the back and forth conversation is always captured in the deal screen. It becomes part of the customer history. Now, where we automate some of this is a tool called a follow-up chain, which I think of as my workflow management tool. And right now, I've got a series of definitions in my follow-up chains list that define things like seasonality, winter, spring, summer. I might have follow-up chains that are defined based on where the lead came from, Facebook versus my website. I might have some definitions based on product type, so wakeboard boats versus fishing boats, those kinds of things. But once that lead drops into the screen or I click new and a follow-up chain has been added to that lead, Lightspeed takes over the rest. And immediately, well, 30 minutes after anyway, a text message or an email or both go out to the customer, thanking them for their inquiry, letting them know that the salesperson will be calling them shortly. Now, the salesperson in question gets an appointment set to their calendar, so now they know they need to call the customer, and management can see, did my salesperson actually make that phone call? There's some tools in the system that management can monitor those things throughout the day. And as the clock continues to tick, additional email and text messages continue to go out before, during, and after the sale of the process. And in my mind, the after the sale of the process is one of the most important elements of this. Maybe a day after the customer signed everything, paid for the boat, paid for the RV, paid for the motorcycle, they've taken delivery, they're excited to go try it out. We send out an email or a text message or both, asking them for their input. How was your experience? We'd love to hear from you. In fact, maybe a link to a survey. And as the clock continues to tick, appointment reminders for service appointments. Maybe it's time to consider trading in that boat that you bought from us 2 years ago. The benefit to this is Lightspeed is doing the engagement with your customers. It's texting, it's communicating to the customers, it's emailing the customers to make sure that they know that we care. And ultimately, when that customer decides to make that trade in or pick the service department to go get their tune up or where are they going to go buy their parts, well, your business is where they're going to go because you've engaged with them, you've kept in touch. And this is the power of the follow-up chains. Now, when it comes to appointment management, when it comes to those phone calls, those deliveries that we got assigned as a salesperson or as an F&I person, the calendar is where those appointments start showing up. So if we go back into Lightspeed, we're going to be able to see those appointments that I get assigned to my calendar to call the customer, to follow up with the customer, to manage the delivery of the product when it comes time. And also if the service department's waiting for updates from a sales deal, that's where they're also going to see their appointment updates. Your parts department's going to see that. Your F&I person's going to see that as those appointments get assigned by follow-up chains. Let's go back into Lightspeed and take a look at that. We'll go to Lightspeed, and I'm going to press my little calendar icon in the upper right corner of the screen, and it's going to open up my CRM calendar view. We're going to pretend like today's Friday the 13th. Yikes, Friday the 13th. But what we see is I've selected Friday the 13th is I see a series of folks that I am sharing my calendar with and they with me, and I can also see my calendar of events. If I hover my mouse over the 13th, I can see that of the people that are sharing their calendar with me and mine, there are 29 appointments assigned to that particular day. Some of these might be deliveries, phone calls, pickups, text messages. Some of them might be I'm actually going in the back in the service department and installing some wheels and tires. Maybe I do that too. I wear lots of hats in the dealership. So those appointments that start getting assigned to me start showing up on the day and time that those follow-up chains assign them, so I can manage my workflow. I can manage my schedule. And this gives me the tool to do that so that maybe as a salesperson, I'm not just sitting in my chair and spinning in circles trying to figure out what do I need to do today. This gives me the what do I need to do today. And let's talk about how we maybe see this in the mobile application. So that's going to be our next subject. I'm just going to close some of the tabs on the screen here and just introduce the Lightspeed mobile application. Now, I hope that most of the folks on this call have seen this before. I hope you're using it. Hope you're loving it. It's one of my favorite elements, one of my favorite attributes of the Lightspeed system. The first thing I'll mention, in many cases, there's some exceptions. There's some elements of the mobile application that do have a price tag attached to them, but the mobile app is free. It does not use a user license, so it's not going to use up any access to the program. You can have as many folks using the mobile application as you want to, and it will not impact who can be logged in at any given time. But the best part about it is it allows you a supplemental Lightspeed experience, allows you to be mobile and away from your desk to manage the sales process. So let's take a look at that together as we go back into Lightspeed. So I'm going to pull up the Lightspeed screen again and pull up the Lightspeed mobile app. And for context, again, for folks that haven't used this before, haven't seen this before, the Lightspeed mobile application works in an Apple environment, works in an Android environment, tablet and cell phone, and it gives you supplemental access to the Lightspeed program. The app is free and it does not use a user license. It gives you access to your customer list, manage your calendar of events. What do you need to do today? It gives you parts and service access, even gives you access to your vehicle inventory, some accounting functionality in the form of your doc report, and if you use the rental module, it gives you access to rental. We're going to focus primarily on deals and follow-ups for today's demonstration, but as I click on my follow-ups button, I get a downward, kind of a scaled down view of that calendar we just saw on the desktop. I'm not really seeing my colleagues. I'm only seeing the things that pertain to me. Who do I need to call? Who do I need to follow up with? What deliveries do I have for today? I can see that calendar events from my mobile app. So again, I don't have to be married to my keyboard all the time. I can be mobile, hence mobile app, right? So if I have an interaction with a customer where I met them in the parking lot, we delivered the boat to the customer, but in the meantime, we noticed there was a little chrome trim on the trailer that was broken. We may want to document that so we can follow up with the customer, maybe follow up with the service department later on. So I put those notes in the mobile application, and any notes I apply to those appointments, to those follow-up reminders, they show up on Communications tab, and management can also see them in their audit reports for CRM. Now, in addition to that, on the mobile application, I can manage text and email communication. So if I'm in the parking lot, we've maybe set an appointment to deliver the boat at 3 p.m. and the customer's delayed, and I'm standing out there with his boat and it's 3 p.m. and I'm looking at my watch and where the heck is Jeff? Well, Jeff might send a text message to Lightspeed or to the business to say, I'm running late, I'll be there at 3:30. And if I'm away from my desk, I may not see that text message, but with the mobile application, that text that came into the deal screen, it's part of the deal history, is also visible from the phone, and I can respond from the phone, and it copy and pastes everything that we communicate back to the deal desking screen. So powerful stuff, retaining all that history in the deal. Now, accessing the deals, if I press the deal button, I can see every single deal that's open in Lightspeed. It's the same list we saw on the desktop. It's just now squashed down to fit my phone. If I can compress new lead, turn my phone into a barcode scanner and scan a customer's driver's license, or use my thumbs, not quite the 8-track version, digital, I don't know, CD version. Use my thumbs to create the customer record, or I like the barcode scan better because it prevents me from misspelling customer names, pulls that information into the lead that I'm building on my phone or my tablet, put some vehicle information into the deal. I can manage pricing. I can manage the entire deal really from the mobile application, even down to those forms, that custom form that we just saw a moment ago. I can press new, grab a copy of that buyer's order, send it to the customer for their review, or any of the forms for that matter, a demo form, a lake form, trade form, an appraisal form, whatever it might be. Customer can then review it with me on my tablet, or I can send it to their cell phone for review. They can click sign with their finger, download it to their device, or I can send it to them via text or email. But the beauty of the mobile application in this context is it allows me to be mobile and away from my desk, so I'm not a slave to my computer. It lets me be mobile, take care of my customers, communicate all that back to Lightspeed so managers can see what I'm doing, and it just provides an efficient experience when it comes to sales, managing those opportunities, right? So let's talk about another element. In fact, this will be kind of where we wrap things up. Another element that really lives in the Lightspeed world, our text marketing solution. I'm going to put into practice a couple of ways where you might benefit from text marketing. And text marketing goes above and beyond the text communication we've spoken about so far. This is sending out mass communication to customers to update them on potential sales, or we're doing hot dogs on a Saturday, or there's a service reminder for a series of folks. Maybe you've got a reward for your anniversary. There might be a number of reasons why we might send out communication en masse. Recall updates. Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, you bought that part from us a while ago. The manufacturer's recalling that. We want to communicate that to you and let you know those things. And we do that en masse. And that's just going to provide an exceptional customer experience from your business. Keep those customers coming back to your store instead of going to the competitor, right? So let's take a look at what that looks like when it comes to Lightspeed. And I'm going to offer a couple of different scenarios. Let's imagine that there's a service bulletin, or there's some reason that you need to communicate to your Yamaha customers that have done service work with you in the past. So you might go into your service, you might go into your customer reports, your repair orders, and this is going to bring up a list of reports. And we're going to target specifically Yamaha customers. So we go ahead and run our report. We can see based on the last 2 years, which is the context in this particular report, these are the customers that own Yamahas that had service work done with us in the past. And there might be some reason, we won't go into a lot of details, but there might be some reason why we want to communicate to these customers to get them back into our service department. Recalls, service bulletins, maybe just an appointment reminder. Number of reasons why we might want to do that. So we can send this report to our marketing tool to send out en masse to communicate all of these folks via text what that detail is related to Yamaha repair orders. Now, in addition to that, some folks on this call may have seen our customer retention report. This is one of my favorite reports in the program. And for context, let's show you where this lives. This lives in the system menu under reports, and this is our customer retention report. So just for context, this is where we are. One of the more powerful reports in the program, and let's take a look at how it works. So I select my customer retention report. Then I can add a couple of date ranges. I want to see customers that made purchases from me, parts, service, sales, maybe rental, between this date and this date, which creates this red section here. So that's my initial purchase date. And with the customers that have done a return, the ones that have come back to see me a second time or a third time or a fourth time, show me those customers as well. So anybody that fits in the blue range from this date to this date, show me those customers and give me an idea of who they are and where they spent their money. So I go ahead and make those selections. Then I can say I just want to see my sales customers, my service customers, my parts customers, or show me everybody. If I'm looking at sales customers, by the way, I can say just show me my Illuma customers or my Arctic Cat customers or my Airstream customers. But again, we're going to look at everybody. Now, customer types might be my VIPs. They might be my employees. They might just be my agricultural or government entity customers. So I've got a variety of customer types, potentially. Make that selection. I want to see the detail, I want to know the context, and I want to sort this alphabetically by customer name, and let's run the report. So I go ahead and click Generate, and lots of really cool information is about to pop up on the screen. So first of all, I can see in that red section, my initial purchase date, there were 259 customers that made purchases from me. And of those 259, in the blue section, that return purchasing date range, 50 of them came back a second time to see me. So we've got a retention ratio of 19.3%. And for those of you that have been on a webinar pertaining to this with me before, you might know what I'm about to say next. We want to be at least 40% in terms of retention. We'd love to be at 80%. If you're at 100%, you are a genius and some sort of magician, but you want to be in that 40 to 80% range. And that way, by market standards, you've got a decent customer retention ratio. The closer you are to 80, the better, right? 19, we're not doing so hot. We've got a variety of issues maybe to attend to. But back to the 50 customers that did come back to me, this is where they spent their money. This is how much, and this is how many transactions. So those 50 people do come back and spend a lot of money with me. We sell them a lot of stuff. But as I go down the screen here, I can see who those returning customers are and where they spent their money and how much money we made from them in those sales. That's important information to know, right? We want to know who our returning customers are, and we may want to send them a thank you message. Text marketing, thank you. And by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we love that you do so much business with us. Here's a 10% off coupon for around Christmas time, whatever that might be. So in addition to that, if I go a little further down into the report, I get to see who my non-returning customers are. The folks that bought from me one time but never came back. And we may want to know why. I guess we have to be tactful on how we apply that, but we now can see who those people are, and I can press my marketing button, and it gives me the opportunity to target my returning customers, my non-returners, or both, and send this information to my marketing tool where now I can send out a message to the folks that didn't come back and say, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we know we did some business with you in the past. We haven't seen you in a while. We'd love to invite you back. Doing free hot dogs on Saturday. In fact, here's a 10% off coupon for our service department. We'd love to see you back. And that gives you an opportunity to get those customers back in your store and maybe try to rectify whatever went wrong during that initial purchase. So that concept allows you to send all that detail right over to your marketing tool, which ends up looking at a screen like this. And my non-returning customers show up on my marketing list. Here's a list of all those customers that did not come back a second time. And I can send out that text campaign to those customers, let them know we'd love to see them, let them know we'd love to get them back into the store. So it's just a quick and easy way to send out communication for all of those different potential scenarios, and it's built right into your Lightspeed program. And that takes us really to about the end of our presentation today. I know we've gone through a lot of things. We went through it in kind of a rapid fashion, but we talked about the different strategies that we offer in Lightspeed for success, different ways to best take advantage of those opportunities you have in your sales department. Make sure that you're closing those deals in an opportune fashion. We talked about automation and communication, workflow management. We talked about digital experience when it comes to e-signature and customizable forms, menu selling, mobile application, and we did go over text marketing. And of course, at this point, if anybody has any questions, that I would be happy to address them with you now.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Brian. Tons of information, a great overview of what the sales module can do within Lightspeed. And I'm going to have you, if you could, Brian, just jump back in even to Lightspeed. We just had a couple of questions, and we've had this before. People are wondering if there is a way to scan a driver's license, that will show up on the desktop. People love that functionality. And, unfortunately, it doesn't exist today in the desktop, but I was wondering if you can go into the Get Help and just show people how they can look at our idea exchange and kind of maybe talk about what else is available in the Get Help area as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, great idea. So at the top of your Lightspeed screen is a Get Help button. You may have seen this before. You may have ignored it before, and I certainly have too, and you're not alone in that regard. But if you do press that Get Help button, it's going to launch your Lightspeed support portal where you will have to set up an account, and hopefully you have one. If you don't, go ahead and set that up or have your admin help you with that. Once it loads, once you've logged in, it's going to serve up a ton of great information. As you can see, Lightspeed support portals at the top of the screen. I've got access to previous webinars, videos from our development team, news about Lightspeed, the latest updates from the latest version. Also have maybe the reasons why customers may be reaching out to support. So some of the common questions that our dealers have. I also think of this as my Lightspeed owner's manual to the program. If I have a question about that mobile application or barcode scanning features, I can enter a question at the top of the screen, a little bit like ChatGPT, and it's going to return a result. It's going to return a document that hopefully answers the question that I have. And this kind of points us into the direction to be able to find, does Lightspeed offer that barcoding solution that I'm looking for? Well, this document may tell you what Diana was saying before. So back to, if you've got an idea, if you think that that barcoding scan feature on the desktop's a good idea, go to your idea exchange selection at the top of the support portal, and this is where you can input whatever suggestion you might have, or maybe review existing suggestions. And maybe you're going to see that somebody's already suggested that, and then we're working to prioritize that and potentially add that to an upcoming version. So
Yeah,
very
I was just
powerful
going to add there
stuff.
too. That's where they can vote on an existing one. Because I mean, the more votes, the louder your voice. So that is what gets kind of prioritized on our product roadmap as well. So awesome. I
Absolutely.
love that you shared that, Brian. So much out in the customer portal. One other thing out there. Oh, sorry, I
Oh,
had to close it.
pardon me.
I was just going to say too, like we are in the midst of uploading or sending out our June release. And one thing that we've added that's new to the June release, if you go to the home page just of the customer portal, you'll see on the home page, you can have one of the scrolling bars there is our release. So like there's a release overview. And if you click on that, like it takes you into our portal where you can see the whole release notes are. The new one here is it's a release video. So if you'd rather just listen to what's new in the release, you can watch the video, very quick kind of just summary of what's happening in that video as well. So that's something relatively new that we've just added to each month's release, probably in the last 2 months. So a great feature as well. And one other question that maybe we can even address that's on that customer portal. People are wondering if the recording's available, because not everybody can always, of course, attend these. Couple ways you can get to the recordings of all of our webinar. Even again, in your customer portal, if you scroll through, there's a link that takes you to your, I think we have to go one more, Brian, even, into the webinars. There we go. Yep. Takes you into all the on-demand webinars. So every time we do a webinar, we post it out on this site. They're also available on our public website. But if you come into the one from your customer portal, you get more information. We put if there's a Q&A or a customer report or the PowerPoint presentation. So even more information available to our existing customers through the customer portal. Okay, I know we've got some other questions, and I may be going to have even like Quentin and Josh come back on too. And if you guys have seen some of the other questions that are out there, I haven't had time to read those as we've been talking. Maybe let us talk about if there's any other key questions you guys think we should address. They're scanning too, and I'll let Brian read those. We do like to get a chance to at least answer some of the questions that are out there. It's nice because you guys take the time to attend. We want to make sure we answer some of your specific questions.
Absolutely.
Quentin, you might be talking, but we can't hear you. And you're not muted. So sorry about that. I don't know, Josh, if you had a time to scan them too. I know there was some questions I had looked at too, even just from text marketing. People asking, like, oh, I want to be able to send something to a sales list or to existing customers. Maybe Brian, you can just address like how you can use
Sure.
text marketing too.
Absolutely. So any of the reports that you're currently using, and you may know the system comes with over 350 standard issue reports. And as you're using Lightspeed, chances are you're adding additional reports to your library. Any and all of those reports can be sent to your marketing campaign to address parts sales customers or service customers or sales department or even rental department customers in a meaningful way, whatever makes sense to you. Those reports can then be sent to your marketing campaign. Now, if I go into the system menu, if I go into marketing at the very kind of top of the system menu, if you're not licensed for marketing, so one thing to be aware of is marketing does require a license. And if you have questions about that, I encourage you to reach out to your Lightspeed account representative. Once you've got marketing enabled, then you can make your own campaigns even from the marketing tool. And I can say, I want to see specific customers, my VIPs, my parts customers, my sales customers. I can say, I want to see products that were sold during this particular time frame from my parts department, or repair orders that were cashiered between this time frame, or sales deals that were finalized during this time frame. I want to see maybe a sales deal that contained a specific make, like a Polaris or a Malibu or a Forest River. I might want a specific model, so I can really define those much like we do in reporting tools, some of those reporting designer tools that you're using today. This has a similar flow and a similar feel to that. Build your marketing campaign. It then gets saved to what we call our marketing groups, where they can be referred to later, and you can continue to send out additional communications to those groups based on the parameters you've input from marketing. This is going to take into account all those reports we talked about, in addition to the campaigns we build manually in the general filters. So pretty powerful stuff, a lot of flexibility and a lot of power in the marketing tools.
Yeah, that's awesome, Brian. And lots of questions about text marketing, which I'm excited to see. It's a new feature and functionality from Lightspeed. We actually did a text marketing workshop just a couple of weeks ago. And so if you even went into that on-demand webinars link from your Get Help, you'll see a lot of access to the details, the recording. We did a checklist. We did a custom report for text marketing. So I'd encourage you to look at that because I think it's a great way to learn more about it. Also see a lot of questions. People are excited about text marketing, but they want email marketing. And we'll just talk about kind of where that's on our roadmap as well.
Well, it's something that we've gotten a lot of requests from dealerships. I get a request at least once a week from somebody that's interested in that, and I'm sure all of the partners here at Lightspeed get similar requests. So we've definitely got it on the roadmap. I wish I could offer more context into time frame than that, but it is something that we are looking at, and I would expect to see something about that soon.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. Definitely, it's been heard and it's in process, and there's a lot of work being done to figure out what we can deliver and how. So stay tuned for more. I mean, check your monthly tune-ups, check the release notes. It's a great way to see what's kind of coming up as well. Okay, and Josh and Quentin, any other key questions you think we should address? I know we're keeping people long, but if you have got time, we love to answer questions. That covered probably a lot of the big ones. I mean, lots of text marketing. So
yeah,
yeah.
a lot on the text marketing. It looks like we've covered those, I do believe.
Okay, perfect. And if we didn't get to your questions today, we also will try to answer some of those just in a follow-up Q&A. For everybody that attended, we do like to send you a link to the recording, which will be available sometime, tomorrow. And then we'll also try to answer some of the other questions we didn't get to today. So want to thank you all for attending. Thank you, Brian, again, for an excellent presentation on Lightspeed Sales Solution. Appreciate everybody taking time and tuning in. And we hope to see you in some of our webinars coming up next month. Thanks,
Excellent.
everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, folks.